I'm walking here in the Amazon rainforest, the largest rainforest with the largest river in the world. The story of the Amazon is ecological and geographic, but also anthropological, and a lot still remains to be discovered. This series of videos is about the pre-European life of the Amazon rainforest, its history since colonization, and the fascinating human geography that define the region today. This is the story of the Amazon. These videos tell stories of places and people as I try to find the echoes of the past in the world of the present. What you are looking at is the Amazon basin. Every single waterway in this entire area drains, ultimately, into a single river. When that river reaches the ocean, it discharges more than 200,000 cubic meters a second. That is more than the next 7 largest rivers in the world combined. Every day the Amazon discharges a fifth of the water that flows into the ocean from all the rivers on Earth. From one side of the continent to the other, after draining from the Andes, over its entire 4,600 kilometer length, the Amazon descends just 150 meters in height. And yet by the time it reaches the Atlantic, it is 5 times wider than the Mississippi and 5 times as deep. To sail across the mouth of the Amazon from Belém to Macapá is an almost 500 kilometer journey and takes 24 hours. Ocean-going ships can sail 3,700 kilometers across South America to Iquitos in Peru, the furthest inland deep ocean port in the world. These forests, along with those in the Guianas and the Orinoco, contain around half the world's surviving tropical rainforests. I've read a few different numbers, but between 10% and a quarter of the world's species of any type live in Amazonia. In the west, where the rain clouds collide with the Andes, annual rainfall reaches an incredible 8,000 millimeters, and these rainforests have the richest biodiversity in the entire world. The Amazon basin is 3/4 the size of the continental United States, and that doesn't even include those directly adjacent forests of the Orinoco or Guiana Shield. The northern edge of the Amazon basin is defined by ranges of low hills, where there are the Tepui, Table Mountains, formed hundreds of millions of years ago, full of animals and plants that are so totally separated from the forests at their base that the closest biological relatives of some of the species are in Africa, dating from when South America and Africa were still joined tens of millions of years ago. It gets even weirder. About 10 years ago, scientists discovered a 600-mile coral reef at the mouth of the Amazon that they had never suspected was there, beneath some of the muddiest water in the world. This is just one of the surprises that the Amazon continues to throw up. Plant biomass in tropical rainforest is roughly 5 times that in a temperate forest, growing 5 times faster with no slowing down in winter. So as you walk through any given patch of forest, you're walking past 60 to 100 different tree species. In some places it reaches 300 species per hectare. As John Hemming writes, you're in the midst of a biological engine of unimaginable intricacy. Insects are around 90% of the biomass of the Amazon's animals. Ants alone have more biomass than all of the mammals, birds, reptiles, or beetles put together. One team of biologists found 95 different species of ant living on a single gupia tree, almost as many as in the whole of Germany. There are termites as well, another third of the forest's animal biomass, quietly decomposing the wood. Brazil alone has 75 species of primate, twice the number of any other country. There are 158 species of bat, the smallest of which are less than 6 centimeters long and weigh 4 grams. There are macaws, harpy eagles, and 71 different species of hummingbird. The apex predator is the jaguar, though you'll be lucky if you ever see one. In fact, most of the life a visitor will never see because it's either too well camouflaged, nocturnal, or up in the canopy. Almost all of the Amazon's 427 mammal species live in the trees. Around 30% of the world's freshwater fish species are in the Amazon. The arapaima can reach 3 meters in length and 200 kilograms. There are catfish that migrate from the mouth of the Amazon to the foothills of the Andes to spawn, then back downriver, a round trip of 10,000 kilometers. There are 2 species of dolphin, Yes, dolphins, both pink and grey, that live throughout the Amazon's rivers. In this drone shot in Fortlandia, almost 1,000 kilometers from the ocean, I had the good fortune of capturing a dolphin surfacing in the morning. There are coral snakes, for which there is no antivenom, pit vipers, rattlesnakes, and of course the biggest snake in the world, the anaconda. There are vampire bats, which feed exclusively on blood. You really don't want to touch the poison dart frogs, and the black caiman can grow to 8 meters long and 1 meter wide, and its jaws can snap a canoe in half. There are piranhas, electric eels, and freshwater stingrays that have poisonous barbs that cause acute pain, delirium, and sometimes death. Bull sharks, one of the world's most dangerous sharks, have been found as far up the Amazon as Peru. There are hornets, scorpions, and the Amazonian giant centipede, which reaches 30 centimeters and can kill small children. The human botfly spreads its eggs through mosquitoes, which bite mammals, including humans, where the larvae then grow for 8 weeks before emerging to resume their life cycle. In one case, doctors had to remove 3 live botflies from the eye of an American tourist. One of the most surprising dangerous animals is the peccary. They are irritable and aggressive, and if one of a group is wounded, the others will defend it to the death. Their canines can slice through flesh, and they instinctively know how to cripple men, horses, and even jaguars by slicing their Achilles tendons. Then there are the swarms of biting black flies, and of course mosquitoes. So who really would want to live in such a place? Well, that's the subject of this video, and we will explore that after we take a little expedition into the rainforest. Our adventure started in Manaus, the largest city in the Amazon basin, and with a population of 2 million people, one of the largest in Brazil. Outside of Manaus is where the dark water of the Rio Negro, itself one of the 10 biggest rivers in the world, meets the brown water of the Amazon. The waters flow at different speeds and temperatures and have different levels of sediment, and so run side by side for 6 kilometers without mixing. We were on the way to Paraná do Mamori. Right, that is lovely. It is really nice and warm. We were staying in a lodge on the edge of the water, and after lunch we had an afternoon to explore the area. This is the biggest tree for miles around, and we were able to spend some time in quiet communion with it. I was traveling with my friends Leticia and Dan, and the main activity for the first afternoon was fishing for piranha.
Hey. Oh my god! Piranha? Yeah.
Evening is rush hour on the river. After dinner back at the lodge, we were out on the water once again, on a mission to find one of the creatures of the swamp.
very, very beautiful, like clean. Oh wow.
Dawn in the rainforest. From somewhere deep in the jungle we could hear the bellow of howler monkeys. When the melting snow of the Andes combines with the rainy season, the rivers rise 10 meters and much of the Amazon basin becomes a vast seasonal lake called Várzea. At the time we visited, there was an entire forest below the water that is submerged for half the year. And this is what we were going to explore. It was coming up to lunchtime, and we weren't the only ones who were hungry. Muito obrigado. Before lunch, we stopped at the general store for some beer and a snack on a Brazil nut. Just as land kids might explore the neighborhood or be sent on errands by bicycle, here they do the same, but by motorboat. After lunch, there was time for another swim, while trying not to worry about the resident caiman beside the dining room.
Did you see this one has a name actually?
That afternoon, we would be going into the jungle proper to spend the night. These incense sticks were incredibly useful for keeping away mosquitoes. Within moments of them being extinguished, we would start to get bitten through socks, pants, or anything. In this part of the Amazon, the mosquitoes will bite through the bottom of your hammock.
Aqui eu vou tirar uma casca, que é a polpa que tem na semente. Sério.
It was a little bit crunchy in ways that I was not anticipating. As you chew it, bursts.
Did it have a flavor?
had the raw version, the natural, and this is the asada, the cooked version. Tastes like charcoal.
It's really sooty.
Essa aqui também dá pra...
It makes the calabresa more crunchy somehow, he said.
Interesting. Maybe more smoky.
Wildlife is never far away in the jungle.
Yeah!
Whoa!
That's what you do.
It's a crotch frog. There is nothing quite like going to sleep in a hammock, surrounded by so much life, ringing in your ears. Before packing up camp, our guide took us on a tour of the forest to see what we could find.
Whoa, cinnamon.
If you're stuck for drinking water in the forest, you can find some in this vine. This is latex, which produces rubber.
It behaves like wax.
One bad leg. It's right paws.
With all the insects and the heat and the anxiety about dangerous animals, the rainforest is an extremely challenging environment to feel comfortable in. Throughout my time in the jungle, I kept trying to imagine how a human could feel at home here, and about who those first people were that were truly able to master it. This video is about the mystery of who the first Amazonians were, but doing history in the Amazon is hard. The climate destroys all wood, cloth, and organic material. Given that the Amazon basin is essentially a massive river valley made of deposited mud, there is almost no stone, and the nearest deposits of metal are in the Andes. That means that there isn't a lot for archaeologists to dig up, and it has massively limited what we can know about the people of the Amazon before the Europeans arrived. Why build with stone, which is incredibly hard to get hold of, when there is such a wealth of organic building materials? With gourds and baskets, there wasn't much need for ceramics, so as a result, almost all traces of the first Amazonians have been lost, consumed by the termites, bacteria, and fungi of the humid tropics. But that doesn't mean we know nothing, and with new techniques, we are learning more every year. Before we start, a quick note on language. In making this series, one of the trickiest things has been deciding what to call the first inhabitants of the Americas. In many of the books I've read, they are called Indians, and in many parts of Spanish and Portuguese-speaking America, they are still called Indios. Another term is Amerindian, but that isn't widely used outside of the Guianas. I've settled on calling them Native Americans, even though this is also suboptimal because that is generally associated with the people of North America, especially the United States. When possible, I'll call groups by their tribal name, but we don't always know the names they call themselves, and I still need a term that applies to all the pre-European Americans collectively. So I swap between Native Americans and Indigenous, and occasionally Amazonian, just for variation, but I'm not particularly happy with this compromise. If you have a better suggestion, by all means do let me know in the comments. So who were these people and how did they live? Without a doubt, the peoples of the Americas left Eurasia before any possibility of the invention of agriculture there, but they then independently developed it, which gave rise, as we know, to the magnificent civilizations of the Maya, Aztecs, and Inca, to name just the most famous ones. Over thousands of years of selective breeding, the Native Americans had created the world's most important crop, maize, as well as tomatoes, peppers, pumpkins, beans, and potatoes. According to one writer, the people of the Americas created 3/5 of all crops that are now in cultivation worldwide. All of this happened later than in the Old World, so when these two hemispheres collided in 1491, the Spanish steel, guns, and horses were combined with the horror of new diseases that they were unprepared for. So where does that leave us with the history of the Amazon? We don't know much about them, but in 2020, researchers released pictures from a massive cave in the Colombian Amazon that had tens of thousands of paintings made between 11,800 and 12,600 years ago. The paintings include now extinct animals, such as the mastodon, a prehistoric relative of the elephant, and giant sloths and Ice Age horses, probably from before the area was even forest. We have this glimpse of pictures painted by humans of themselves hunting creatures that don't exist anymore. But the key question is, were there complex civilizations like the Inca and Aztecs in the Amazon as well? The first outsiders to descend the Amazon in 1542, the Spaniards led by Francisco de Orellana, wrote about long villages on the banks of the river that stretched for miles inland. But how developed were they really? Did they have large-scale agriculture in cities? This is where we have to introduce one of the most acrimonious debates in the field. On the one hand, you have the idea that because agriculture fundamentally depends on extracting nutrients from the soil, and because most Amazonian soils are very poor, societies in the Amazon could never grow large. In a complex forest ecosystem, there's only so much that humans can eat. Farming increases the amount of edible energy per square kilometer, meaning a farmer can grow more food than they themselves need, so that other people don't have to. Those people can spend their time doing other things like constructing monumental buildings, being full-time warriors or priests or merchants or scribes. This is called specialization and is necessary for the level of complexity we call civilization. If almost everyone is focused on finding food without the surplus from agriculture, there's a limit to the level of complexity that's possible. In this view, pre-Columbian societies were always small, often moving, and relied on hunting and gathering, along with a small number of cultivated crops. This assumes that while people can manipulate the plants, they can't fundamentally change the Amazon's poor soil. But did the Amazonians find a way to increase the yield of the land? Well, maybe. Here we need to talk about terra preta, or black earth, which occurs across Amazonia. It only really began to be studied in the 1990s. As its name suggests, it's black and has plenty of carbon, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus, and is found often littered with potsherds, possibly to aerate or drain the soil. It's often full of artifacts and is clearly related to human habitation. It is much less rapidly exhausted than common rainforest soils, and so perhaps could support large-scale agriculture. And this was done deliberately, not by slash and burn, because, as its name suggests, charcoal has to be incompletely burned before being mixed into the soil. We can see it was something deliberate and invented because it has spread across the Amazon over the past 2,000 years. Another simple reason given for why large-scale farming wouldn't work is that stone axes really kind of suck. In one study from the 1970s, across a range of jungle environments, chopping down a single tree of 4 feet in diameter with a stone axe took 115 hours, or nearly 3 weeks of 8-hour days. As Charles Mann puts it, with a stone axe, one does not so much cut down a tree as use the axe to beat a section of the trunk to pulp, weakening the base until the tree can no longer support itself. And this is in the world's thickest forest. With a steel axe, they could do it in less than 3 hours. It's no wonder that steel tools are basically the very first thing that uncontacted peoples want when they make contact with modernity, and that is as true today as it was then. So without steel tools, perhaps farming wouldn't have been possible. According to at least one geographer, the slash and burn agriculture you see in the Amazon today is a modern phenomenon, only made possible with the arrival of steel. And slash and burn is not very sustainable because burning wastes most of the nutrients in the vegetation. The existence of so much still healthy forest today implies that whatever the Amazonians were doing must have been more ecologically sustainable than that. One of the reasons this debate is so heated is because of its implications. According to the proponents of this theory, believing in large-scale civilizations endangers the rainforest by suggesting that now we can chop down the trees and do large-scale farming. That, of course, is a massive problem today, and so people really care about this debate. Archaeologist Betty Meggers, one of the chief skeptics that the Amazon was home to any large-scale civilizations, wrote, "The idea that the indigenous population has secrets that we don't know about is not supported by anything except wishful thinking." Carvajal, the chronicler of Orellana's expedition, misunderstood what he was seeing. Or maybe he had just made it up. Now, though, things have started to turn up which are giving evidence for the other side. In the Llanos de Mojos, an area of savanna and rainforest, we now have evidence of raised fields, causeways, aqueducts, and reservoirs. We're talking about large-scale organization, and certainly large numbers, perhaps as many as 1 million in this area. An interconnected series of fortified villages that flourished between 1200 and 1500 AD. They had causeways that stretched for kilometers, surrounded by 600 kilometers of canals, reservoirs, and artificial lakes. And it's completely different to anything you would find in the Andes, so we can assume we're looking at a completely separate culture. It's uniquely Amazonian. This is on the southwestern frontier of the Amazon, but would certainly qualify as a civilization. But there's more. In the headwaters of the Tapajós, we now have evidence of more earth-building cultures living in fortified villages. There's more in the Upper Xingu River of dozens of communities with homes and plazas connected by roads, bridges, and canals, and an engineered landscape of fields and fish farms. In 2018, scientists reported large areas of Amazon forest in Mato Grosso were dotted with earthwork engineering, and according to these researchers, supported up to 1 million people. They found defensive and ceremonial earthworks around the tributaries of the Purus and Madeira rivers, and ceremonial sites. In October 2023, a group of over 200 scientists published findings using LiDAR, a technology that allows researchers to see through soil and vegetation, of 24 previously undetected pre-Columbian earthworks. Extrapolating from this and studies of domesticated tree species, they suggest that somewhere between 10 and 23,000 sites remain undiscovered. And this was across the rainforest, in south, southwest, and center, and up in the Guyana Shield as well. To be clear, their model still predicts that around 80% of the Amazon basin is unlikely to have these earthworks, but what they are predicting is way beyond what was previously thought to exist. Put another way, almost certainly more people lived in these areas then than do now. According to the researchers, it is now hard to dispute that Amazonia was home to dense and complex societies that practiced earth moving, soil enrichment, and animal ecology that significantly raised the productivity of the environment. So, where does that leave us? Simply put, we are living in the most exciting possible period there has ever been for discovering what was there before Europeans arrived. Month by month and year by year, discoveries are going to tumble out of the forest.
For example, in 2024, after I had recorded this video, researchers revealed a site in the Upano Valley in the Ecuadorian Amazon that began some 2,000 years ago and included more than 6,000 platforms, made from earth arranged in a geometric pattern. Again, they had roads and, yes, agriculture, and the site spread across an entire region. This was beyond anything previously discovered. The surprises keep on coming.
What we can now say for sure is that the myth of the noble savage, people living peacefully with each other in the Amazon in harmony with nature, barely making an impact on the environment, is almost certainly false. In some places they built large earthworks, and throughout the Amazon they almost certainly manipulated the forest around them. So much of the pre-Columbian life of the Amazon remains unknown. But the story of the Amazonians is more complex than we thought, and every year we untangle it just a little bit more. What other surprises is it going to throw at us? And that brings us to the next part of our story. These people had mastered an environment that still to this day, with the benefit of modern technology, people find extremely challenging. But their world was about to change forever. Two worlds were going to collide, a collision that would shape the modern world. Indigenous America was about to meet a wave of plants, plagues, and people that it had never encountered before. The next video is about the colonization of the Amazon.